In the fourth way, which is a practical map to work on ourselves, there's this idea that nature produces enough energy in us. So we have enough energy, usually, if we are just a healthy being, healthy instinctive center, through the three types of food. And we'll go into this later, but through like food, actual food, and water, and through air and impressions, somehow in this human biocomputer, body-mind system, machine, there's energy. And this energy is designed to keep the machine alive, operating, but actually the higher purpose is to use this energy to become more conscious and perfect ourselves from the point of view of completing this, deepening and completing this evolutionary purpose. That's why we are here. That's why to become conscious of the truth about what we are, to live more in the third state of consciousness, self-consciousness, and even go further into the fourth state of consciousness. And that will be a more fulfillment of our God-given potential and the meaning of our life, so to say. However, in the usual state of humanity, first of all, we don't have access to knowledge, and humanity is asleep, and we are conditioned to be asleep, and all of that. But so in the state of the second state of being asleep, our energy is leaked. We are leaking this energy, which is designed for working on ourselves and remembering ourselves and all the work. We are leaking it continuously. And then at the end of the day, even if we are interested to work on ourselves, we don't have energy. We are depleted. So Spensky, and in the fourth way, they talk about these leaks of energy as obstacles to evolutionary conscious progression. And they are called as six obstacles, and we are encouraged from the very beginning to, as the more we learn to be present and observe ourselves and remember ourselves, to struggle with these obstacles. To struggle meaning to plug these obstacles and diminish this leaking of energy. And the six obstacles are, we already touched on some of them. And first obstacle is this state of imagination and daydreaming. The state of imagination and daydreaming, and as a first obstacle. The second obstacle is a state of identification, consciousness being sucked into content all the time, into a feeling, into a thought, into a sensation, or just being sucked into daydreaming. Basically, imagination requires identification. And that's the second obstacle. The third obstacle is inner considering. We are going to talk later about this, but being very much preoccupied and wrapped up around how other people perceives us, and wanting to be liked and to be appreciated, recognized, and to be seen in a good way, and doing whatever we can to avoid being judged and worried about what they think of us. This is identification around people with some imaginary picture of ourselves. The fourth one, which we are going to tackle today, is the non-expression of, so the expression of negative emotions, expression outward or inward, expression of negative emotion or unpleasant emotion. So the work would be, what we're going to talk today is non-expression of negative emotions and unpleasant emotions. There's a fifth one is lying, which takes many forms, and just straight up dishonesty as being just the easiest part to work with. And the sixth obstacle is unnecessary talk. And yeah, Ouspensky talks about it. So you can, if you want to research further, you can look into Psychology of Man's Possible Evolution, or In Search of the Miraculous, or The Fourth Way. Also, all these books, they have two of these books, they have great indexes, so you can just go straight to one of these obstacles. It's a way to make the work more practical and not just remember oneself and be present, but watch out for these things where we leak energy all the time. And we are going to tackle today and probably next week as well this big topic of the emotional realm and this big expenditure, mechanical manifestation of expressing unpleasant, negative emotions. And let's take like a 3-4 minute break, and we'll come back. All right, so we will introduce some of the core concepts meant for practical application about first of all, we'll explain on what does it mean actually a negative emotion. All emotions are negative. Somebody asked us, well, maybe there's some grief, not a natural emotion. So we'll define a little bit this concept, as well as go into various aspects of how to work with this non-expression without creating any side effects, like suppression and repression, and why, actually what to do with this energy. And maybe I'll let Peter take the lead here.
Before I start, can I ask, I am assuming most of you are familiar with this concept in the fourth way. Is that true? If it's not true, would you mind just raising your hand in the video like that? Okay, so Wendy, but most everybody else is? Okay. That's good to know. So just by way of a brief introduction then, and it's interesting to note that Gurdjieff, whenever he referred to this area, he referred to it as unpleasant emotions. And Ouspensky then formalized it into the term negative emotions. And he went to great length and in great detail to explain what that means. So in general, it means things like Mihai was saying with the weather. It's very unpleasant. There's an unpleasant sensation in the body, in the instinctive center. And then what happens is we express that. We say to someone, it sure is hot today. I hate this humidity. I'm feeling so tired because of it. And it's unpleasant emotion is being emitted. And that can also be true of the inconvenience of having to get up in the morning when we go to work. We don't want to go to work. We're tired, we're sleepy. We don't like our job. We talk about it. We may even talk out loud about it to ourselves in the kitchen in the morning, self-grumbling, and then we talk to other people about it. We complain about our job. We complain about our partner or our mate to other people. Or it takes a form of complaining, expressing irritation. We express impatience. Think about when you're in traffic, you honk the horn, or you glare at someone, or you yell at them, or you give them the finger, or whatever your tendency may be. It's all this expression. We have an unpleasant, what begins usually as a sensation and then becomes an emotion. So we'll get into that later, how negative emotions actually, and this is one reason why this area is so significant. And I was going to say potent, and it's because it actually involves all four centers ultimately. They all get involved in this tangling into this knot of what the system refers to as negative emotions. So it can include everything from mild irritation to violent anger, or from a mild version of self-pity to a deeper, what I would say, depression. And I don't mean in in certain medical situations where a person has chronic depression, but where we're just very depressed. We've had a bad week, and so we're feeling very low, and it's gone beyond just self-pity. It's now become a deep, dark mood of depression. So all of this whole spectrum is what's called negative emotions. And from the point of view of the fourth way, the idea is there's a couple of principles to keep in mind. And I'm just going to say these, probably those of you who've read on this subject already know this, but it's worth mentioning, is one, that the cause of what ultimately becomes a negative emotion is in us. It's in me. The weather may be hot, may be very unpleasant, it may be cold, it may be very unpleasant because it's cold. And the sensation of that is not a negative emotion. That's just a sensation in the negative half of the instinctive center. There's unpleasantness physically. But then when it becomes embroidered into, I don't like this, I wish this was not happening, this is bad, this is terrible, why does the weather have to be, all of this, now when it becomes a negative emotion, this is all due to me. This is my reaction, it's not even my reaction, it's my interpretation of my own reaction. Now I'm making it all about me. And this is another characteristic of negative emotions. It's all about me being negative and expressing my negativity. So this principle that the cause is in us, this has a long, deep root that it requires intensive study to really see to the bottom of this, to see to the truth of this, that the cause of the response to our reaction, it's in us. Now, you may say that sounds extreme. I mean, if somebody comes up on the street and slaps me in the face, that hurts. There's definitely going to be a bodily reaction. But where it becomes a negative emotion is where I take it personally. I feel you have hurt me. Who do you think you are in relation to me? This is now all negative emotion. And it's all in me. Because for all I know, this person is on drugs, or they're drunk, or I just had an affair with their wife, whatever it is, they have their own good reason, let's say. But my negative reaction is in me. So anyway, this is a long study. This is one reason we've hesitated to dive into this topic without acquainting you first with some of the other major ideas, because a lot of the other ideas connect to this topic. So that's one thing. Causes are in us. Another is that this also sounds funny. We do not need any negative emotions. We can live without them. This can sound extreme, but imagine going through your day, going through your life, everything happening the way it happens, and you are there for it while it happens. It doesn't mean you have to like what happens. You may not like what happens, but you don't embroider it, take it personally, make it all about me, and accuse. This is another thing with negative emotions. It's when we turn around and accuse something or someone. Do you know if you're walking down the sidewalk and you trip, you even turn around and look at the crack in the sidewalk to find something to accuse of having, made you stumble and maybe look silly on the sidewalk. Look at that. Why don't they fix this damn street? Things like that. So we don't need our negative emotions. This is so, it even sounds funny when I say it, but I know it's true. It's so liberating and light. Doesn't mean you don't suffer in your life. It doesn't mean things happen that you don't like. You don't want them to happen. It means you do not respond with a negative attitude and a negative emotional sort of pushback. And the word negative comes from the word negare, which means to negate. It means we're negating what's happening when we have a negative emotion. We're negating it. We're rejecting it. I'm hesitating because I know this touches up against the whole idea of suppression and sort of shadow work and all of that. That's another topic or another dimension of this topic. And yet it's still worth bearing in mind what I'm saying from the point of view of the fourth way. We don't need negative emotions. But think about how much space they occupy in people's lives on a daily basis. There was one other thing. Let's see. I think I wrote. Let's see. Oh yes, this is. It is that, and it's something that Ouspensky and actually Gurdjieff also pointed out at the very beginning, and that is not until we stop this expression of these little unpleasant and large emotions can we really observe ourselves. And this proves to be one of the most powerful tools in the fourth way system for self-observation. And the reason is there's so much coming through us and then out of us when we express negativity. And we can't see it all. We just feel it. I'm negative. I'm mad. I'm upset. I'm irritated. I feel sorry for myself. Whatever it is, there's so much going on in there psychologically and instinctively. We don't see it. It all comes through as sort of one package, one burst, and then it's gone. And once it's gone, we can't see it. So when we put a break, we dam it up, but we do it intentionally. We do it consciously, if you will. Now, when we do that, all that material that had gathered in to become that explosion, now it starts to become visible to us inside. Now we can start to see a lot of the different threads that went into making up this reaction in us. And it then becomes a tracing back to the source and what got wrapped around that source and how many layers got wrapped around, how many layers of me, my story, my life, my suffering, my hatred of you, my whatever it is, got all right. And then boom. And that can become implosion too. Like I say, self-pity or certain forms of depression. It's the same thing. It's the same manifestation. It's like one is high volts and low amperage, and the other one is low volts and high amperage, if you will. If you know physics at all, I'm not a physicist, but I understand that from an electrical point of view, but it's the same thing. Self-pity is the same thing as irritation in different form almost. So 3 things to just bear in mind here at the beginning. The cause of negativity is in us. To observe yourself from this point of view in an honest way without repression. You can be in a situation and you don't need to react with negativity, even if someone's being a jerk at work or calling you out. The truth is, we don't need to respond with negativity. And in fact, there are much better ways to respond. Our negativity back is only going to worsen the problem. And then the third thing is, this is a sort of a master tool for self-observation. This changes the game, if you will, of self-observation. This is no longer just observing our movements, our sensations, a thought or a feeling. It's observing how our psychology and our instinctive center work together to manufacture this sense of me. And then it explodes into the world. It becomes a demonstrative expression. You know, people think I can really express good negative emotions. I'm tough, I'm hard, I'm powerful, I'm mean, I'm rude, I'm direct, whatever it is. And this becomes, to go back to the earlier topic, false personality. This is false personality manifesting. So those are sort of 3. And to me, the most interesting of these, actually, the one that has the most meat, is this idea that we can't really observe ourselves if we keep expressing negative emotions, we lose all the material really that is there to be had for self-observation and to take us deeper into the psychology of human being. So that's sort of a framework for starting us off. Mihai, I don't, maybe that's a good spot to see. I'm sure that's prompted some good things from you. So I'll hand it back.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I made some notes here. It's a very rich topic, and it's interesting that Stoic philosophers, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, as well as Buddha's teaching, they talk about this, that basically we are the creators of these negative emotions. The causes are not out there. We are responsible. You can even take an experiment and you expose 20 people to the same stimuli that's somehow unpleasant, and they will all react differently. Some will kind of explode outwardly, some will churn inwardly, some will be okay. So it means that it's how it is interpreted and what happens with that stimuli is that what creates our attitudes, our subconscious, our expectations. Yeah, usually another thing I want to say is that so negative emotion is actually more than just an emotion. So negative emotion is an actual fourth way term. I'm not talking about, so let's say anger, frustration, feeling energy of frustration now, anger, sadness, grief, some tiredness or low energy. These are all natural manifestations of the machine, of the biocomputer necessary for life. Negative emotion is actually like some kind of combination of forces. As Peter said, there is some kind of negative, like some negative sensation from the instinctive center, like cold or heat or hunger. Actually, they have this expression of being hangry, like this when the instinctive center is a little bit unhappy, like we are tired or we are uncomfortable or we didn't sleep or we didn't eat. Then it's even known in regular psychology or regular popular wisdom is that now from that energy of the instinctive center, now it embroiders all of this more crankiness, and this energy in the instinctive center bleeds into the emotional center. So coming back to my point here is that it's more than just an emotion. It is that emotion or that energy that is followed with identification now. Consciousness or that which is aware is pulsating weakly, and then it becomes like, okay, my whole experience is this emotion. Then there's identification. Now this is a little bit unpleasant, and our system is not used to taking the heat of internal friction, and then actually it goes into imagination now. Like that energy goes from the instinctive center, emotion center, now intellectual center, with thoughts about the issue, about how reality should be different than it is. There's all kind of also underlying subconscious attitudes where, things should go along how we want it. The whole universe should be revolving around me, and then somehow, if things are not going smooth for me, then we are upset. The false personality, ego, self is upset, and then it starts to complain or starts to express this. And this could be, we are different types. Some people are more like boisterous, loud, active type with a certain type of feature that we tend to go out there and all kind of variations of expression of anger or complaining. But to some other types, one can be very quiet and is churning on this kind of nobody would know, but there's all of this negative weather, so to say, this negatively charged internal landscape, where actually it's a lot of thoughts about it. I'm actually not quite feeling the actual thing, but there's a lot of thoughts and story about judging myself or judging other people or judging the world. Also, this, it's not just anger and outburst and all of that, which are classic, but this sense of, actually I made some videos recently about beating oneself up, So beating oneself up, this internal negative criticism, like, look at you, what's wrong with you? Nobody's gonna like you, this or that. So this would be like internal expression of this already negative emotion, imagination, identification playing out, which actually it's like very draining and very painful. I do know that these things like, so this lack of self-worth or self-hatred or self-blame, it has also causes. There are deeper causes connected with childhood imprints and unlovingness and imitation and this or that. So there's some innocence around that. And in order to go to the roots of that, one needs to do some deeper subconscious work. But all of this beating oneself up, self-criticism, is actually this constant, this negative emotions being expressed internally. Another idea here is that non-expression, we so far we explain more like what they are, yeah. Non-expression of these things, we are not doing it for some moral reasons or to be, according to some scripture, or in order to be loving or to be kind or to be goody-goody people or spiritual. This is really for the purposes of plugging this major leakage of energy that whenever we express these things, either outwardly or inwardly, is just like the refinery is using this, is losing this like highly precious octane that needs to be used for fuel, So it's blowing, the refinery is constantly blowing. And then we are feeling tired. Although we may have some temporary relief sometimes, especially with expressions of anger, but we are just losing the fuel that we need to complete ourselves from the point of view of consciousness and reaching third state and fourth state of consciousness. So non-expression, Gurdjieff and Ouspensky were talking about, we are not talking about suppressing it. Yeah, suppressing it is actually even more harmful in some way and can have all kind of other side effects. So the non-expression of these unpleasant emotions is not suppressing it. It is putting a dam on this, like something wants to come out. Ouspensky would say, there's a worm in you that wants to express itself. This, this uncomfortable energy, and we just want to like ooze it out, to not feel this anymore. So what we're just putting a block on this, but we are not just now suppressing it and trying to be calm. No, we are first of all, we need to be aware whenever there's this trigger or this emotion. We need to train ourselves by studying the system and having alarm clocks and thinking along these lines. We need to train ourselves to right away engage the work, because now it's actually more, it's the next level, it's harder actually. It requires much more attention, conscious will, ability to kind of stop that when everything in me, in the machine, wants to to go internally, outwardly, to complain, to express, to put this is a big spoke in the wheel of mechanicality. This is one of the most mechanical things to kind of express these things. One of the easiest things we can do is to go in imagination and to express this unpleasant emotion. So we put a spoke in the wheel, and now we are more aware. We wake up. We need to engage. So we can't stop just at non-expression. We not express, then we become more aware, more present, and now we are now aware of this unpleasantness. Basically, we have discomfort, and we are trying to kind of, the tendency is to be in the head, have eyes about this, what happened, which is also another expression. We can actually not express it outwardly, but we are kind of churning on the subject. This is also expressing it. So we need to somehow be able to drop the thoughts about it and just be with this uncomfortable energy and take the heat, take the burn of it, and use it. Now there are different steps here that one can do depending on the intensity of emotion or depending on the emotion, but we need to start by observing what's happening at the level of the body. The emotional, we are observing the emotion without trying to change it, without trying to analyze it, yet observing the energy in the body, the sensation somewhere in the chest, in the belly. So we are blocking this flood for the purposes of being more aware, observing, and then as soon as we can, we start to investigate this. We investigate this what otherwise would be me being upset. We investigate this false personality, and we're going to investigate some of the underlying causes for it, because the causes are in us. So we are, it's like, yes, blocking the leakage, but then we are using this to observe our psychology and realize there are some kind of underlying beliefs about the world, underlying beliefs how the world should be, or underlying beliefs about ourselves. So we are getting deeper in investigating and getting to know our false personality. And we are using this unpleasant energy as actually voluntary suffering now. It's intentional voluntary friction. We are kind of surfing these waves of Mordor, this battery acid, and we are using it to actually, if we do this even one time, you will see actually it will give you energy, and it will make you much more aware. Although it's not peaceful and pleasant, it may get later maybe peaceful and pleasant, but it's actually, some of you were asking about will and developing conscious will and ability to do. This very much starts with this kind of type of work.
And to touch on something you said, Mihai, to emphasize, the goal here with non-expression is not to stop the negative emotion inside and not to not have it. In right order, that will naturally dissolve by itself. We're not trying to get rid of the negative emotion inside. If there's anger, I'm not trying to not feel anger. If there's self-pity, I'm not trying to not feel self-pity. I'm just trying not to express it. And this is interesting too, especially if we live with someone, to try not to show it, because we can express our negativity not only verbally, but through the moving center. We can be kind of look moody, slump shoulders, kind of look sour, yeah. How you doing? I'm fine. This kind of thing, that's still this subtle expression. It's coming out. We want someone to know that we want the world to know that we're unhappy, that we're negative about it. And so we're trying to control that expression only so as to see what's going on behind it. And the other thing, and this is something Ouspensky tried to make clear, there's a difference between the emotion we're having, this negative emotion, and the expression. And what happens is we justify, as he says, we give ourselves permission to express it, to let it out, to show, to demonstrate, I'm negative. That in itself warrants observation. Where's this permission coming from? Why do I feel obliged or privileged or allowing of myself to demonstrate that I'm feeling negative right now? So we want to look at that as well and see and come to understand, not only do we experience these negative emotions and feel the urge to express them, we then grant permission to ourselves to express them. And what we're really trying to do here is find a way to give ourselves permission not to express them. Now we're sort of taking care of that part of the equation in a very critical way. We're giving ourselves permission to withhold the expression for the purpose of then using it as a catalyst for turning it around and examining. The unexamined life is not worth living. This is a key component of that. If you really want to examine yourself, examine your life, examine your negative emotions, examine what's going on inside of you. You know, psychology, ordinary psychology, does not look at it like this. And a lot of other teachings also don't put the emphasis that the fourth way does on this area. And as I said, it touches upon so many other areas. And it's not a matter of just abiding in awareness and not feeling angry. No, it's not expressing the anger and then looking very clearly at the anger inside, but it's going inside. And there, you know, it's amazing what's inside of us, inside our psychology. And I want to say, I want to give an example though of something that I noticed, because I have some, when I walk around near my house, there's two dogs, and whenever I walk by their house, they come running out of the house and they come onto the porch and screaming down the stairs and into the fence, and they're just barking. And they look like they want to chew my leg off. And sometimes I turn around and I just study them for a while, because what's happening is they are not actually having negative emotions. It's entirely instinctive. It's the instinctive center in them is guarding its territory. It's become a habit. It's a thing. And I look at them and I don't feel any negative emotional energy coming from them. It's all instinctive. But if you notice when you are with someone and they become like a dog and are barking at you, you'll see that's where it started. It's in the instinctive center. And many of our negative emotions start there. Something happens, it's unpleasant, we don't like it, and then it becomes an emotion. As Uspensky would say, that the emotional center borrows energy. It borrows energy, negative energy, from the instinctive center, from the negative half of the instinctive center. It actually borrows it, and it sort of takes it in, it infuses it into itself, and then it uses that, and with the help of identification and negative imagination, it weaves a negative emotion. And now this becomes the feeling of me. And one other thing is worth mentioning too is, you know, we're not all the same in this regard. Some of us don't have any trouble not expressing, let's say, impatience, not showing our irritation. For some people, that's pretty easy. Whereas for those same people, not showing their anger is very difficult. They want to show that they're angry, and they want to get it out, get it off their chest, fix the other person, fix the situation, bull their way through with negative explosions. Whereas for some people, that's not their, it's easy for them not to do that, but it's not easy for them to, but instead of doing that, they go inside and they just churn on judgments about other people. And they just chew on it and chew on it. And it's actually an expression of negativity, more or less inside, but sometimes it's external in the way they treat people. Very condescending, very disapproving, without necessarily getting angry. Like, Mihai, saw you do that again, son. Okay, that's how you want to live your life, son. something like that. It's still a, instead of, God damn it, Mihai, if I see you do that one more time, you're out of the house, you know, explain. So it's so interesting. And that's why it's not the same for everyone. So we have to find where are we expressing it and then try to withhold it. And if you can't withhold it for 10 minutes, try withholding it for 2 minutes at least. That's a beginning. And just you'll feel it. Something wants to show I'm in a bad mood because you didn't treat me right, or I'm violently angry. I am really angry with you, and I'm going to let you have it now. I'm going to let you know it. So,
And
Mihai?
you know, I'm very aware that some of us have this outward expression, some of us for either through conditioning and through the fact that this our parents, or especially as women, you know, we're talking here as men having the luxury of being pissed and barking at people, but the overall woman conditioning, this is not okay to express like this anger and stuff like that. And so there's different conditionings where we are we learn early on that it's not safe to feel or express this emotion. So then, because in the past, you know, like an angry woman won't have a good life. Actually, it'll be dangerous. And only more recently is kind of allowed and seeming equality. But still, we all have our own favorite negative emotions that be very different from each other. And one can actually be very kind and not stirred, but this may play out as even self-criticism. It goes internal, self-criticism, self-blame, self-judgment, self-doubt, all this negative narration, no good enough. These are all expression of that. Often when I work with people in clinical setting, it's interesting, I see that they are upset about something, and they are they're telling story about it. So this is I mean, which is fine, you know, in psychotherapy it is fine, and actually that would be a good time to kind of, it's an intentional time to. So now as a work with psychotherapist, now be like, oh, it's okay, I'm handling it. So don't it's fine to talk about your problems a little bit. But I often see that they are not saying, hey man, I'm fucking angry about this, man, I'm sad. And they are not saying that. It comes like a whole other embroidery and story and thoughts in the intellectual center and association and stories. And actually are not feeling what's actually happening. So it goes into judgments, goes judgment towards oneself, all kind of stuff. But underneath, so I have to make special effort to be like, hey man, so what's happening right now in your body? And there's like, I'm hurt, you know. So there's a human that I'm hurt, there's anger, there's fear at the root of it, and which is an emotion. Maybe something happened that was hurtful, and it's okay, you know. It's this, there are these basic human emotions like fear, sadness, grief, anger, hurt, shame, that we are going to have them, and they have a function in some way. There's some dashboard, there's some light on our dashboard, you know. What we are talking about is that something that we are actually, it goes beyond that. It embroiders with negative imagination and with identification, and then there's a permission and to express it, and blaming, and leaking the energy because it's uncomfortable. And also there's this attitude that this is okay, and the attitude that is very important to, in order to make any change in this area, is to change our attitude about that something out there is responsible for this. So this is the major block. There's a little lizard here. There's something out there is responsible for my emotion, you know.
It's recommended too to even make a list of negative emotions. For example, irritation, impatience, anger, yelling at other people. I said self-pity. There's a whole host of them. To actually write them down and try to look and see which ones am I most prone to. And as Uspensky said, what's most important is not the most intense necessarily, but the most frequent. So some people most frequently, they're just irritated all day long by other people and situations, and they're expressing their irritation. Other people are resentful, and they're just, that's their go-to negative emotion is resentment. Other people, it's to show their anger, and they're angry, they're bitter and angry. And so to make lists, make a short list, long list, and then just observe and see what's happening when I express some type of negativity. And again, based on the frequency of it, what is it? And not to try not to, but to just observe. It's the beginning. It's opening that first door inside to look inside and see what's going on behind this formation of negative emotion inside of us. And we can talk all day long, but in the end, it is a personal study. Each person has to go into their own inner world and look at all this, and then we can talk about it, and people can give examples, and those are valuable discussions. But in the end, it's really a solo journey into your own psychological universe to see how all of this forms in us, and how much how it lies at the backbone of our sense of identity. And the reason I say that is because what happens is we use negative emotions in two ways generally. One is as a shield. We actually are shielding ourselves when we express negative emotions. And the other is as a weapon. They are a self-defense mechanism of the ego, of imaginary picture of ourselves, false personality, imaginary I, whatever you want to call it. It's camouflage actually for this sense of identity in ourselves. And we're trying to be honest with ourselves and look behind our own camouflage and see what's there, and see that that's what we've fallen prey to most of our life, that feeling of I. And it has made us miserable. We suffer. The fourth way also talks about unnecessary suffering. We suffer unnecessarily with almost all of our negative emotions, because almost all of them are in the realm of what's called personality in the fourth way. The more genuine emotions, human emotions that Mihai was referring to, you could say, belong to essence. It's important that essence suffer. Essence does experience hurt. It can experience, I would say actually, it doesn't experience anger as emotion, as I need to now seek revenge anger. I need to set the record straight anger. But there's this heightened energy. If you peel away the word anger and you look behind it, there's still this intense energy. And that can be an essence. And it can be feel quite explosive. And it's valid only in so much as it is energy in us. Now think about that. That's a good example. Think about that energy somehow being distilled. You take away the name anger, and you take away the feeling of I am angry, and then you distill that energy, and you distill it in such a way that it actually fuels awareness. This is what this is all leading to, is ultimately being able to transform negative emotions. And it doesn't mean anger becomes inner calm. It means that that energy of anger is now released for awareness, for consciousness. And so that's where this is going. But to get there requires taking off all the camouflage, all the sense of I associated with our negative emotions. This is really I've said this, used this word before, but it's really a beautiful work if we can do it in the right way without being identified, and to see its potential. This need not be heavy, dark work so much as liberating very insightful work. And I promise you, most people are, they're not looking at themselves this way. It's another appreciation for this system. It's surprising, isn't it, in a way that we don't teach kids in grammar school about taking responsibility for their own negativity instead of taking it out on other people or bludgeoning themselves, as Mihai says, beating themselves up with negative emotions.
So yeah, I will give it to questions, but I just had one more thought here. So yeah, to keep in mind that this self-pity, self-deprecation, all of this is a very clear example of expression of negative emotions. So it's not just outwardly flashy big ones. Another thing Ouspensky was saying that actually in the second state and in the state where false personality is in charge, the feeling of I, the identity is in false personality, our emotional center, which is supposed to be like a wonderful sense organ and a wonderful, like a rich world, is functioning at a much lower level due to this creating and justifying these negative emotions all the time. And Ouspensky was saying that actually there is not a center for negative emotions. This is an artificial growth, basically. And as we do this work, then a lot of this will diminish a lot. And then we can actually have much more richer emotional life. It's not that, oh, well, I'm going to be flat-lined and I'm like imperturbed. And it's like, whatever, man, it's all good. I'm here zenned out. No, you're going to feel people more. You're going to feel more like beauty. You are going to have access to a higher level of the emotional center. And another thing is that we are, the fourth way, they say that in order to do this awakening thing, we need like almost two pistons. They need to support each other. Self-remembering and transformation of suffering. Transformation of suffering, it's like a big topic and we are going to go into it later. But training with a non-expression of negative emotion, this actually, now we don't express it. Now we have this discomfort and we start to do the beginning of transformation of suffering into more being, into more self-awareness. So we are sacrificing this temporary itch and in this complaining, resentment, blaming, accusing, this worm. We are sacrificing this worm that eats at our inner life and eats at people, for sacrifice it for our soul, creating really our conscious soul.